Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Board Explorer, and I'm out on another exploration. Today I'm in glorious Sussex. I'm near to Hassocks, between Keymer, the village of Keymer, and the lovely village of Ditchling, right in front of the north face of the South Downs. Behind me we have a terrific, wonderful object that I'm going to explore today, and Fred Malladay is the gentleman standing next to me who's going to tell me all about it. And you are part of the Oldland Mill Trust.
Correct, I'm chairman of the Oldland Mill Trust at the moment.
It's very nice to meet you, Fred. Thank you so much for inviting us to your wonderful windmill. And that's what it is, a windmill. So, this windmill that we're standing in front of, we're going to have a look round shortly, is quite old.
Yes, the first evidence is in 1703. So we assume it was built, let's say 1700. Worked commercially right through to 1912.
Gosh.
When it was abandoned, as many mills were in those days, of course, when these newfangled steam engines came along and rather took over the grinding business.
But steam did have a connection with this mill.
Oh yes, indeed. In common with most mills at that time, it was actually converted so that you could use an external engine drive to actually power the stones, and we'll see evidence of that later on.
It's a post mill, which is there's sort of three types of mill, isn't there? Mm-hmm. And post mill is the original and probably the most romantic of the mills in many ways.
Yes, and probably the most common in the south of England, because of course they're almost entirely constructed of wood. We had plenty of timber in the south of England, rather less stone and brick. They tended to build more tower mills as you move further north.
And when you come to see a mill like this, of course, the early post mills were much more open, with the trestle that holds the post in position exposed. But as time went on, the roundhouses were built up to protect that trestle and also act as storage.
Precisely so, yes. And this is typical in that respect.
So we're going to go in and have a look at it. How long has the trust been looking after the windmill?
Well, it ceased working, as I've said, in 1912. It was basically left to rot and rust quietly until we get through to 1980, when the local authority quite reasonably pointed out it was about to collapse. It was a dangerous building.
Gosh.
Therefore, it had to be either seriously restored or abandoned. And at that stage, the Hassocks Amenity Association, as it was then called, a group of local volunteers, of course, they bravely said, we'll restore it. It might cost £7,000 and it might take 7 years, they said at the time, and we smile now.
Yes, because you told me a rather staggering number that it's actually cost.
Well, we've certainly spent over £100,000 in terms of materials alone, because everything you see was done by volunteers. That's what we're most proud of, in fact.
Yes.
And it commenced in 1980, the actual restoration.
Wow. Well, I think it's time that we went and had a look in more detail at this wonderful windmill. So, Fred, can you lead the way?
By all means, certainly.
That way?
Yeah.
John, by the magic of editing, we have now appeared inside the mill, but we're not just anywhere in the mill. We have climbed up 2 lots of stairs, or steps, I suppose, and we are right at the top. Now, the sweeps, they call them sweeps in Sussex, not sails, would be at that end behind us. The first thing that you notice, or I notice, is we're swaying like in a ship. And that's normal, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
I just thought
very gently.
Yes. So what part of the windmill are we in?
This is the bin floor, B-I-N, the bins, where we store the grain that is waiting to actually flow through the stones under gravity to actually be ground. You'll see the shape of the roof is rather like an upturned rowing boat. It's a clinker-built rowing boat upside down.
And clinker because of the boards here are overlapping on one another.
There's a 50% overlap, a very generous overlap, and in fact you can't see it, but the weatherboarding at the front is double thickness.
Oh, is it?
Because the weather will always be hitting the front, of course, by the very nature of the windmill. It will always face the wind.
So the grain is hauled up here. It's brought by the farmers and everybody else by, in those days, horse and cart or whatever, dumped down at the bottom, and then hauled up.
Hauled up by wind power. We still use the wind power. The hoist system is above our heads up here.
Oh yes.
And that can be, we have a clutch system whereby we can engage that or disengage it from the wind shaft so that it's wind powered as always. It'll be brought up to just below where we're standing, and then the bag's taken off the hook and simply tipped into one of the 3 bins we have up here.
Which are over here in front of us. We have a window here, and Fred just pointed out earlier that down there you see these rather beautiful houses. Well, if you can see the middle section of it, that was where the miller's house used to be, or he would have lived. So we've come down, minding my head. What floor is this, Fred?
This is the stone floor.
The stone floor. Weaving our way round.
Because of course it contains stones. Here you can see the top stone exposed. It of course is the top stone that rotates. The lower stone is fixed to the floor, hence you get the relative movement. The top stone is of course driven by the brake wheel, as it's called, which is also a drive wheel, and that wheel is connected to the wind shaft, the massive wind shaft just above our heads here.
And that's the sail. The wind hits the sweeps, which drives the wind shaft.
Precisely, yes.
So this is the real. This is the power horse of the windmill.
Yes.
And it's funny. I've seen windmills, and they look quite sedate when the sweeps are turning. But you were telling me earlier that the ratio can be geared up so that the stones turn a hell of a lot faster, and they need to.
Yes. Our stones turn at 8 times the speed of the wind shaft, which is fairly normal for most post mills. So if we're milling typically at up to 10 revs a minute for the sweeps, that means the stones will be rotating at about 80 revs a minute, which is quite fast.
Yes. The wind shaft here, just point this out because I've seen ones that are made of wood, but this is a cast iron.
This is hollow cast iron
right.
wind shaft, which went in around the, would have been about the 1870s, something like that. Cast locally, it's got the Phoenix foundry in Lewes cast into it. In those days we actually had foundries in Sussex, of course, to do this sort of thing. Very common replacement in mills because it's the wind shaft which is in some ways the weakest element within a mill because of the fact that timber dislikes torsion. There's no real timbers that can withstand very high torsional loads, that is twisting loads.
Yes.
And of course the wind shaft is subjected to twisting.
Absolutely. Just so happens down on this floor we have the lovely Julia.
Hello.
Hello Julia. Are you enjoying?
I am loving it.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Beautiful.
What floor is this, Fred?
This is called the spout floor because it's the floor where the spout is, where the ground flour will be coming out.
Ah, yes.
There.
And so I'm just happen to be standing in a very important position, I understand.
You're in the position that the miller would be positioned when he is actually running the mill, certainly, because you have all the control system available to you. On your left hand, you can feel the flour, you will feel the fineness of the flour. If you want to adjust that, you use the tentering gear, and that adjustment will raise or lower the top stone, thus opening or closing the gap between the stones. If you want to change the rate of flow of the grain into the stones, you can do that via this twist peg over here, which simply raises or lowers the chute down which the grain flows into the stones. And finally, you even have a little window which enables you to see the sweeps as they're going by, so you can judge the speed of rotation.
Right.
Because in this position, of course, you can't see them other than through that window.
We mentioned it's a post mill, and the post that everything balances on is right here. And this is the original post.
We believe this is the original post, yes.
With fascinating bits of graffiti, the names of the millers and various other associates. Now, there's one bit that's the oldest you found.
The oldest we found on here is 1839. Joseph Winchester, October 1839 is cut into there.
Gosh. So, We are, Fred, sitting in the roundhouse, where all the bricks have now been beautifully restored, and you've got bits and bobs on the walls behind us. And I suppose we haven't really said too much about the trestle, and the trestle is this, it's like a tripod, isn't it, that's holding the post in position. Now, you were just telling me something absolutely fascinating as we came down. Of course, over a period of time, the ground can shift, the vertical angle can get out of true, which is a bit of a problem for the miller. So what do you do?
Well, we can adjust the verticality of the post, and I'm going to stand up and
sure.
we are going to look at the area down here. These are wedges that enable you to fix or move the position of the bottom of the post.
There's so much engineering in this for something that was built so long ago, originally thought out. And we've recently been to the Oldland Windmill, and people may have seen that video, and if you haven't, check it out on our YouTube list. That's a much later mill compared to this one.
It is a later mill, yes. Something like 120 years later than
Right.
Oldland, which means it can demonstrate all the changes in technology over that 120 years.
So between the two of you, and of course you're in line of sight, which is great.
Absolutely. Within a mile and a half, we show, if you like, the beginning and the end of post-mill design, certainly in the south of England.
So how do people know about you, and how do they come to find out and visit this wonderful mill?
Well, we do obviously publicise in the local press, etc. Articles we publish, and we give talks, etc. We, throughout the entire year, Thursdays is the volunteers' working day, and we are very happy to have the public walk in on a Thursday, and we are very happy to show people around. More formally, we are always open on the first Sunday in every month from April through to October. And on at least two of those months, normally May and September, we have sort of major event days where we have a lot of other things attending. Could even be a traction engine driving the mill using steam power.
Yes.
Which of course is a possibility.
That's something that we haven't really overly covered in here, but the time is ticking on the video. But just briefly, towards the end of the mill's life, when steam power came in, it was an option for millers to use that, harness that power, and you still have a drive, what do you call it, drive ring?
A drive pulley on the outside, and a lay shaft coming in to connect to the stones, so that we can go back to the principle of using an external engine drive to actually drive the stones.
Yes.
So we are able to demonstrate that, which was very, very common, in fact, in the 1880s, 1900s. Many mills were converted.
Yes.
We don't believe there are many others that have bothered to put that drive system back.
So a bit of history there that other mills aren't showing.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we'll put the website in the description and what have you, and so do come along and visit the mill if you can. Do make a donation if you're in the area, or when you come. And thank you so much for watching. And Fred, thank you for taking me and the lovely viewers around. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, become a patron, all the usual sort of stuff, and we'll see you when we're out and about next time. But until then, bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.